Hi there, today I'm going to be talking to you about the use of lime sulphur and how to apply it. Lime sulphur has long been used by growers around the world for the disinfection, sterilization of their plants. This is primarily to break the overwintering of pests, common pests and fungus-related issues. It is a dormancy treatment. You can't use lime sulphur at any other time of the year other than during winter dormancy, and this is where the plants would, deciduous trees would of course not have their leaves, and conifers are in the stage of dormancy. The most important point, or the most important consideration, is that you don't use lime sulphur when your trees are actively growing, when there is young juvenile growth, whether it be on a conifer with needles or candles that are developing, or in the case of junipers where you've got tips, runners developing, or in the case of deciduous trees where they are budding in spring. If you find that your trees are doing this, then it's too late to apply lime sulphur and you'll have to use another treatment. There aren't too many trees that you cannot lime sulphur. However, you should never treat a recently wired tree with lime sulphur. The reason for this is that when you wire, you often will make tiny little breaks inside the branches, and lime sulphur can get into those cracks and may damage the plant tissue. One of the other species that you shouldn't be treating with lime sulphur is the tropicals, such as this fig. Another species I would avoid treating with lime sulphur is satsuki, which is the Japanese azalea. You could probably avoid treating any of the azaleas, though, the standard rhododendron. There's several different ways that you can apply lime sulphur. Obviously it's diluted with water, so you're going to need to spray it on. If you have a small collection of trees to treat, then you can use a small little finger sort of pump sprayer, or you can use one of these attachments that you can get for attaching onto a bottle that then makes it disposable. Otherwise, if you have a larger collection, then these 2 liters, or you get 5 liter versions of pump sprayers. And then if you have a large collection, then you can use a battery operated, or some of them also are arm, you pump it up with your arm. When spraying it, you want to make sure that you're using as fine a mist nozzle as you possibly can. So usually this means that you're going to be working at the highest possible pressure, because that's going to give you the smallest droplet. The more droplets you have, the better the coverage will be. Something else that I need to mention that is very important is that the lime sulphur that you spray needs to be fresh. If you've had lime sulphur that was unused or left over from previous years, you'll need to throw that away. You won't be able to use that now. It also oxidizes very easily. So if you have opened the bottle before, you either had to have sealed it or got rid of the air very well, or otherwise it would have oxidized. One way of testing it is to open the lid, and it should give you a very pungent sulphur smell, sort of like rotten eggs. And it shouldn't be crystallized. So the timing of the treatment is temperature related. So you want to wait until the nighttime temperatures are as close to freezing as possible, and the daytime temperatures are between sort of 10, 15, 20 degrees. And in fact, the higher temperatures, so if it goes above 20, then your dilution ratio will increase. So in other words, it won't be as concentrated. So you need to ideally spray your trees when the temperatures are close to 0 at night, and then during the day the temperature should come up to about 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. And then lastly, you should ideally spray on a day where there isn't much of a wind, otherwise you're going to get a lot of spray drift. Lime sulphur does stain, so you need to bear that in mind, that anything that lime sulphur does contact, so any wooden surfaces or walls, it will stain that. The stain is temporary, but nevertheless some people don't like it. It does take several months to dissipate. So the dilution ratio that I'm going to be using is 1 to 20. I'm mixing up 10 liters of solution, so I'm going to be using 500 mils of lime sulphur. Now going to add 10 liters of water. If you have a number of shohen trees, you can first mix up a batch of lime sulphur in a bucket or other similar container, and then dip the tree into the solution. As I said earlier, the lime sulphur will stain containers. So if it's a container that you care about, then this is a good way of doing it so that the lime sulphur doesn't stain. And then just want to agitate the tree slightly in the solution so that you make sure that it contacts all the surfaces. And then you can just place the tree down at an angle so that the lime sulphur drips off the side. You don't get too much into the root ball. You do want to avoid getting too much lime sulphur into the soil. Some is not a problem, but you don't want to drench it, of course. So in this way, the excess can just drip off the leaves. For other trees like this Chinese maple that are in good or high quality containers that you don't want to stain, you need to take extra precautions, and we're going to do that by wrapping it in newspaper. You can also use towels. Wet towels I find works very well. If you have enough towels, or if you have a small collection of trees, that's fine. Another method, possibly, if you don't want to use tape, is to use packaging plastic or cling wrap, and then just run it around and protect the container that way. You get this in various widths. You probably should get it at any packaging store. And then, of course, the final method is to spray with a power sprayer. Okay, so I've now completed spraying my trees with lime sulphur, and as you would have seen, they were very generously sprayed with the product. You want to make sure that you get the trees from all angles. It's very easy to spray from one side, and you actually miss entirely the opposite side that you didn't spray on. So make sure that you get good coverage, and ideally you want to spray 2 to 3 times with lime sulphur before it gets too warm. So don't wait too long in winter, because it's quite often happens that spring creeps up on you without warning, and then it's too late to spray the trees. Once the trees have dried, you can then remove the plastic or the newspaper that you have used, or whatever you've used, towels or whatever, because obviously if the lime sulphur is still dripping from the needles or the leaves, it will drip onto whatever you were protecting. Just one last comment. The idea with the plastic, the newspaper or the towels, wet towels, is mainly to protect the containers, but also depending on how you're going to be spraying, you don't want too much of the product going into the growing medium. It's not so much that it will penetrate the soil too deep, it's just that it leaves a very horrible sort of residue, a limey residue, of course, on the surface, and that's not very nice, and it also it's difficult makes it difficult for watering afterwards. So sometimes if you do get a lot of lime sulphur on the surface, you can scrape that top layer of soil away. Once you've completed your cycles, whether it's 2 or 3 times of treating with lime sulphur, once you've completed that, if you have any product left, it's probably better to discard of it, because it's not going to store until the following season. So I believe I've covered how to treat your trees with lime sulphur, how to use lime sulphur, and it's something that I would encourage you to, a treatment that I would encourage you to perform on an annual basis. And then, of course, during the growing season, you'd want to be using various pesticides and fungicides preventatively to control outbreaks of any pests, and obviously ideally to prevent them. A healthy tree, of course, is the best prevention, but sometimes there are bugs that are going to happen, that you're going to find anyway, and it's best to be treating preventatively for them, because very often once there is an outbreak of something, it's already too late, particularly in the case of spider mites, for instance. So thanks very much for watching. Hope that you've learned something from this. If you haven't done so already, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell. I do updates every Friday. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.